Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Welcome to NWA'S Wonder. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to cut a short knicker. Now in Nigeria, we call it short knicker, but it's really a short or a knicker. So I'm going to be showing you just how to come about a short knicker. First things first is to fold my fabric into two. Now I folded my fabric into two with the wrong side up and the right side inside. Now the next thing I'm going to do would be to mark out my waistline. I hope you can see. I'm going to be marking out my waistline, trying to make the line thick enough just so you can see it. After marking out my waistline, the next thing I'm going to do would be to roll out my side line. Now there's this company seal, as you can see. It's always on the edge of every fabric and I don't like it showing on my clothes, so what I'm going to do would be to roll out the company seal, pretty much rolling out 1 inch from the edge of the fabric. Right, I'm going to roll out around 1 inch from the edge of the fabric just so that company seal does not show. If I was using an Ankara, I would do the same thing. The next thing I'm going to do would be to apply all my horizontal measurement. I'm going to be applying all my horizontal measurements, which is my waist, my length and my crotch line. And these are the measurements I'm going to be using, showing right here on your screen. Now first things first, I'm going to go up at my waist by 1 inch. Now this 1 inch I'm taking out from my waist is going to be the measurement for my waistband. So when adding my waistband, this 1 inch will automatically get replaced. So I'm going to go up by 1 inch and then I'm going to mark my chalk on my crotch line. Right, I took out 1 inch and then I marked my chalk on my crotch line. My crotch line is 10 inches, so I marked my chalk on 10 inches. The next thing I'm going to do would be to mark out the length of my short. Now the length of this short knicker is 21 inches. I'm going to mark my chalk at 21 inches and then I'm going to add 2.5 inches for hemming allowance. I'm going to be adding 2.5 inches for my hemming allowance. It's also called an inseam. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of the short. I'm going to take out 1 inch from my waistline and then I'm going to mark my chalk on my crotch line. I need to take out this 1 inch because I do not want my crotch to be too long or too long. So I'm going to place the exact measurements on the other side of the short and then I'm going to use my straight ruler to rule a line across like so. The next thing would be to place my vertical measurement and I'm going to be starting with my thigh. Now I'm going to divide my thigh by 2 and then I'm going to further divide it by 2. That means I'm going to be dividing my thigh by 4. So my thigh is 25 inches. 25 divided by 2 is going to give me 12.5 inches. I hope you can see. So I'm going to mark 12.5 inches on my crotch line like so. After marking my chalk at 12.5 inches, I'm going to be dividing 12.5 by 2. The simplest way would just be to break my tape into 2 like I am doing now and then come about the center. So I'm going to break my tape and then I already have the center. So what I did was it was 12.5. I brought it back, stopping at the 12.5 inches. I broke it into 2 and then I'm going to mark my chalk on that line. 12.5 divided by 2 is going to give me 6.3 inches. Now as you can see, it is 6.3 inches from the center to the sideline is giving me 6.3 inches, right? So it's pretty easy doing it with your tape instead of looking for a calculator. So I'm going to mark my chalk at 6.3 inches on the length and then I'm going to mark 6.3 inches on the allowance. After marking my chalk at 6.3 inches, I'm going to use my ruler to rule a line across this measurement. So like I said, I divided my thigh into 4. Right, first of all I divided it into 2 and placed the 12.5 inches allowance, and then I divided 12.5 into 2, which is the measurement I placed on the length and on the allowance for my inseam. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do would be to place the 12.5 inches allowance from my thigh on the length. Right, I'm going to be placing that same measurement on the length of my short and then I'm going to be placing it on the inseam allowance. Now this will help me calculate my short very well. So after placing it on my inseam allowance, I'm going to use a straight ruler to rule a line across like so. So in case you are confused, this is the waistline, this is the crotch line, this is the full length, and then this is the added allowance for my inseam, right? So the next thing I'm going to do, I divided my thigh by 2, and then I placed the measurement there, and then I divided my thigh into 2 again, and then I placed the measurement on the center. So 12.5 divided by 2 is 6.3, which is the center line you are seeing there. So the next thing to do would be to come in by 1 inch on the edge of my short. I'm going to come in by 1 inch there and come in by 1 inch on the added allowance. After coming in by 1 inch, I'm going to take my ruler, right, and then I'm going to curve it to stop on the crotch line. I'm going to marge it to stop on the crotch line like so. After marging it to stop on the crotch line, I'm going to come in at my waistline by ½ inch. Now this pattern or this method could be used to cut a short for a female, but the trick is that females have more hips, or females have larger hips than men in general. So what I'm going to do, if I was making for a female, instead of coming in by ½ inch at my waistline, I'm going to come in by, say, 1.5 inches, right? Instead of coming in by ½ inch at my waistline, if I was marking for a female, I'm going to come in by, say, 1.5 inches, and then at the bottom I'm going to go in by, say, more than 1 inches. Do you understand? I'm going to make a video to explain this, but I just said to tell you. Now the next thing I'm going to do would be to use my curved ruler and curve it to the crotch line. So I'm going to start from that ½ inch line and curve it to the crotch line like so. So the waist of a short, or for the waist of a trouser, it is always divided by 4. So the waist of this short is 32 inches. 32 inches divided by 4 is going to give me 8 inches. I'm going to mark my chalk at 8 inches, starting from that ½ inch line. Right, I'm going to ignore the side line and start from that ½ inch line I just marked. I'm going to mark my chalk at 8 inches. After marking my chalk at 8 inches, I'm going to add 1 inch for the sewing allowance on the waist. Now a lot of people keep asking if I need to calculate my trouser or my short knicker with enough allowance when marking the front. The answer is no. Once taking when you're done taking the exact measurement of your client, you just divide it like I am doing and use it to mark your short knicker or your trouser. Now after marking, the measurement or the allowance that you are looking for would come in when you are marking the back, right? Now the next thing I'm going to do would be to come down by 1 inch on my waistline. I'm going to come down by 1 inch at that point, and then I'm going to use my straight ruler to mark it to the ½ inch line I just marked behind. So like I was saying, you need not worry about allowance at this point. All the allowance you need would come in when you are marking the back, and I'm going to show you that in a bit. If you've not subscribed, subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell icon, just so we know that we are making good videos and helping people across the world. Now I would have curved this part with a French curve, but I decided to use my hand, right? So I'm going to be using my free hand and curve the crotch like so. Now that is that for the waist and for the crotch of my short knicker. That is that about that. The next thing to do would be to place my inseam. Now the inseam, like the thigh, is divided by 2. Now the inseam of this trouser, or this short knicker, sorry, is 20 inches. 20 divided by 2 is 10 inches. I'm going to place my chalk at 10 inches, starting from the 1 inch line I marked behind. Right, so I'm going to start from there and I'm going to mark my chalk at 10 inches, and I'm going to mark my chalk at another 10 inches. Right, the next thing I'm going to do would be to use my ruler and merge those lines. So first things, I'm going to merge the one at below, and then I'm going to merge the other line like so. So that is that about cutting the front of a short knicker. I hope you understand. I divided my laps by 4, divided the inseam by 2, and then the waist was divided by 2. Right, now the next thing to do would be to cut out the short knicker and then go on to place the measurements for the back and cut everything out. So the next thing to do would be to place the measurements for the back of my short knicker. I don't know why I keep calling it short knicker. It's a short or a knicker, right? That's what English taught us. So first things first, I'm going to turn it upside down. If you go back a few seconds in this video, you're going to notice that the short knicker was like this. But now I'm going to turn it upside down because first, it helps conserve material. Secondly, that's just the way it is in general. So apart from conserving material, you need to turn it upside down so that you get the measurements you are looking for. Right, now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm trying to place it well just so that I have the exact measurements, or I have all the allowance I need, because the back of the shorts or the back of the trouser is where I get to add all my allowance. For those asking in my previous video, the back is where I get to add all my allowance. So I'm going to first of all rule my horizontal measurement again, which is my crotch line, my length, and then the added 2.5 inches allowance. So I'm going to use a straight ruler and I'm going to rule a line across these three. Right, so I'm going to rule a straight line for my crotch, my length, and the added 2.5 inches allowance, so that I get to place my measurement on that part, on those straight lines. Now the next thing to do would be to add 3 inches for my crotch on my crotch line. I'm going to add 3 inches on my crotch line because for a matured male, 3 inches is enough. But if you're making for perhaps if you're making for a teenager or something, you could take it down to 2.5 inches. But for a matured male, 3 inches is enough. This is enough allowance. This is the allowance I'm going to be using to sew my trouser. So after marking my chalk at 3 inches on the crotch line, I'm going to come to the length and mark my chalk at 2.5 inches. So I'm going to add 2.5 inches from that point. Remember, for the crotch it was 3 inches, but for the added allowance it's 2.5 inches. After marking my chalk at 2.5 inches, I'm going to use my curved ruler to mark the line for the back. So this is the 3 inches, this is 2.5, this is 2.5. I'm going to use my curved ruler to mark the line for the back, like so. So the next thing to do would be to calculate the hips of the short knicker. Right, it's to calculate the hips of the short knicker, and this is one of the simplest ways I've found to calculate the hips, just so that when you're done sewing your shorts, you don't have too much excess and you don't have too little. So first things first, I'm going to be dividing the crotch by 2. Now the hips is going to be sitting between the crotch and the waist, so I'm going to divide the crotch into 2. So that is 8.5. 8.5 divided by 2 is going to give me 4.3 inches. So I marked my chalk at 4.3 inches, and I'm going to use a straight ruler to rule a straight line on that point. Right, now after marking my chalk on that point, first things first is I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch on the front of my short knicker, and I'm going to come in with 1/2 inch. This 1/2 inch I'm taking out is the sewing allowance. Right, I'm going to sew on 1/2 inch on the side after putting my pocket. So I came in by 1/2 inch on both sides. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do would be to calculate the distance between the 1/2 inch. I'm going to calculate the distance between both 1/2 inch, which is 8.75 inches. Do you understand? I calculated the distance between both 1/2 inch, which gave me 8.75 inches. Now I'm going to multiply that by 2. 8.75 inches multiplied by 2 gave me 17.5 inches. Right, it gave me 17.5 inches. Now on the edge of my short, I'm going to mark my chalk at 2.5 inches just to be safe. I'm going to mark my chalk at 2.5 inches. After marking my chalk at 2.5 inches, I'm going to calculate the distance between this half inch to the 2.5 inches line, which gave me 12 inches. 12 inches multiplied by 2 gave me 24. 24 plus 17.5 is 41 inches. Now the hips of this short is 38 inches and I already got 41.5 inches, which means I have more than enough allowance, right? I have more than enough allowance when it comes to sewing, right? So the thing is, first things first is to now if you're done marking and let's say you don't have enough, right, you get to extend that 2.5 inches line. So first things first, I marked my chalk at half inch, and then I calculated the distance between those half inch, which gave me 17.5. After that, I marked my chalk on 2.5 inches from my crotch line, right? I marked my chalk at the front of my short. So I calculated the distance between this first half inch to my 2.5 inches line, which gave me 12. Multiplying 12 by 2 is 24. Now 24 plus 17.5 is 41.5. Like I said, the hips of this short knicker is 38 inches, which means I have almost 4 inches excess. Now going to the waist, I'm going to just add 1.3 inches allowance at the waist. If you remember, when I was cutting the front, I added 1 inch for the allowance on the front. So for the back, I'm just going to be adding 1.3 inches allowance, which is enough. When I am sewing it, it is enough. I do not need too much allowance on my waistline, right? I do not need too much allowance on my waistline, so 1.3 inches is enough. The next thing I'm going to do would be to use my straight ruler and rule a line and mark those lines on the crotch of the short knicker. After marking the lines with my long ruler, I'm going to use my hand and make a free curve for the crotch of the back, like so. After that, the next thing I'm going to do would be to come up by 2 inches at the waistline. So from that waistline of the front, I'm going to come up by 2 inches, right? I'm going to come up by 2 inches, and then I'm going to use my straight ruler to merge it to the sideline for the front of the short knicker, which is pretty. So that is that about marking the short knicker. The next thing to do, of course, would be to cut it out, and I'm going to cut it out like so. If you have any questions about this video or about any video that we've dropped in the past, then do let us know in the comment section below. I'm going to reply to every single one of them. If you've not subscribed to this channel, then please subscribe to this channel, turn on the bell icon so you get it when we upload videos like this one and many more. So if you're using a zipper, if you're going to be putting a zipper, the length for the zipper is like 2 inches from the crotch line, but for this one I'm going to be using 6.5 inches for the zipper. For the length of the zipper, I'm going to be using 6.5 inches, and then for the length of the pocket, I'm going to be using 7 inches for the length. So I'm going to mark my chalk at 7 inches, and then I'm going to be using 1.5 inches for the wideness of the pocket. So 7 inches, 1.5 inches. I'm going to use my scissors, and then I'm going to create a notch at the 1.5 inches line, and I'm going to notch it at the 7 inches line, right? So this is how it's going to be when I am done sewing, and then I'm going to notch the front zipper fly. I recently dropped a video where I showed you how to fix the front zipper fly of a trouser or of a short knicker. Click on the link in the description box of this video, and I'm going to show you just how to fix the front zipper fly like a professional. My name is Kosi1, and thank you for watching up until this moment. I'm going to see you on the next video. Until then, bye bye.